archaeologist called John, he excavated 56 holes just within the henge, pits that they think they would have had maybe wooden posts or maybe even stones, called Aubrey holes. And just here behind you, you can see a disc. That's an Aubrey hole, and a concrete marker here and here. So they've shown just 3 of them. But underneath the Aubrey holes, when he excavated, he found cremated remains under half of them. And so this is a place where the ancients buried their dead. And the bones have been carbon dated to about 2600 BC, so when the blue stones, the smaller stones, arrived. A mile away from Stonehenge, so over the brow of the hill, down in the valley is the River Avon, and there's a huge earthworks there called Durrington Walls, and they excavated within Durrington Walls a geophysical survey beneath the soil, and they found the bases of hut circles. And so one of the archaeologists came from Madagascar, Africa, and he said, in my culture, stone is for the dead, for the ancestors, and wood, so the village would have been built in wood with straw roofs, it is for the living. So the feeling is Stonehenge was a cemetery for the ancestors. That's another reason for it. Now, you can see clearly most stones have disappeared, and this is how tourism has evolved over the years. Stonehenge, until 1918, when it was given to the National Trust, it was owned for many, many years by the local landowning family, the Antrobus family. And it was a curiosity. People could come and they could pay a penny. There was a little turnstile down there and you could look at the stones. It was a curiosity. The last of the Antrobus family died in 1916 in World War I. And Stonehenge, the whole of the Antrobus estate was auctioned. And a man called Sir Cecil Chubb, a landowner, he bid for Stonehenge and he bought it for £6,600. So this is in 1916. He was a historian, and then in 1918 he gave it to the National Trust. So it was only after 1918 that Stonehenge started to become a protected monument. Looking at some of the stones, you might have seen some concrete in the bases. They did a survey and they worked out which stones were safe and which ones were likely to fall, and some of them were righted and concreted in. So that was all in 1918. Fast forward to the 1960s, when I was a small boy, we used to be able to come here, and this was a climbing frame. I'd come with my sister, you could play tag, you could run around the stones, climb on them. But by the 60s, this is when we were, in this country, affording cars for the first time, and tourism, the graph rose. And there were so many people coming by the 70s that in 1977 they said, let's rope it off and we won't have people walking amongst the stones. But people were chipping away stones as souvenirs. Some people were carving their name in them. Some people were spraying them. So, Greenpeace protested and sprayed the stones, and they've been sprayed only recently. So it was decided to move the public away from the stones. So it's the history of tourism, and of course the 21st century, cruise tourism is on the rise, and sometimes you can come to Stonehenge. There'll be twice as many coaches here because they've all come up from Southampton or Portland. So it's just interesting, not just the history of Stonehenge, but the history of tourism at Stonehenge as well. So there we are, the Aubrey holes, definitely a place for the dead, the ancestors. Let's walk around a little bit further. We're going to walk all the way around. So, a central meeting place, a place for the ancestors. Stonehenge also is aligned to the sun. And where my bag is now, we're standing right on the divide and this book, and we're looking through. Now these are the 2 biggest stones. Only one is remaining. It's this one, and it's got a little pimple on top, the tallest stone. Its neighbour has fallen down, but when the Stonehenge was complete, you'd look through the gap in those two stones, and right at the back is the heel stone, which is the stone detached from the circle. If you were standing here on the 21st of June, the sun would rise above the heel stone. We're on the alignment of the summer solstice. There's trees right in the distance now, but back when this was built 5,000 years ago, the sun would have risen right on the heel stone. So the summer solstice. Now, the clever thing with Stonehenge, if you walk all the way around, which we're going to do, and stand by the heel stone and look back this way, it's aligned to the winter solstice as well. So the 21st of December normally. So it's aligned to midsummer and midwinter. And the ancient people, no artificial light, the sun, the moon, the stars would have had much more meaning. And so Stonehenge is a solar calendar. And of course, if you know when midsummer is and midwinter, over time you'll know whatever time of year it is, when to sow your seeds, when to reap your harvest. So yeah, a solar calendar. And they think in summer, this is when most people come, they come to celebrate the summer solstice, so next month. And this is one of the few times that people are allowed amongst the stones. There's lots of guys with big yellow jackets on, making sure that no one, disrespects them, but people flock here. Now, historians think it's the winter solstice that's more important. Think, if you're back thousands of years ago, a very important time of year is when you know that the light is coming back, the sun, the warmth. And so they think they would have celebrated the winter solstice, the 21st of December, much more than the summer. Now, that gap in the trees over there, that leads down to Durrington Walls. And when they excavated under the ground, they found lots of animal bones, pig bones, with knife marks in, so that they'd been bones that were used for feasting. Now, they dated the bones, they're all 9 months old. Most animals are born in the spring, so April. If you take 9 months from April, it takes you to December, which is the winter solstice. So that's why they think the winter solstice was more important. So Stonehenge, for me, it's built for many reasons, but because there's no written evidence, we can only guess. 4 stones around the circle. There's one over here to the left, a small stone, and there's one over here to the right. There was 4 of them forming a rectangle around the circle, and if you draw the diagonals of those 4 stones, they've found where the other 2 used to be, then right in the middle is the centre of the circle. So they think those were surveyors' tools, the station stones, for building the circle. When they were here, the alignment of the station stones, if you look along one way, it's the furthest south that the moon rises, and if you look along the other way, it's the furthest north that the moon sets. So they did a big study over the winter on the lunar standstill. This is the furthest north and south